Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Bill Hargrave, and we have a very short 30 minutes to try to at least get started on what's a very meaty topic of how RFID lays the foundation for AI-driven analytics in supply chains and in-store experiences. I have with me three excellent panelists who will help explore this topic. Hervé from Decathlon, Bill from Avery Dennison, and Art from Qualcomm. So guys, thanks for joining us today. So we're going to set the stage just a bit and then talk about from the data side and AI. Art and I were talking as we're walking over here. Interestingly enough, this is my 21st consecutive year of speaking at NRF, all around RFID. And for good or bad, I mean, there's those first years with working with Walmart and others of just does it work, and then how does it work, and how do you utilize the data? And so it's certainly evolved over time. And I think we're at the point now with the advances in artificial intelligence that we can truly harness and take advantage of the data that we have, and that's what we're going to explore today. You know, and along that road, several years ago, we actually challenged retailers to think about what they would do differently when they had 95% and above inventory accuracy and they knew the location of things. We called it the 95% store. Imagine what you would do if you had a 95% store. It would allow you to reimagine how your store associates worked, how you interacted with your customers, how your processes that you thought worked, how they actually worked, and how you could improve on those processes. You know, and we've made advancements, of course. You know, 85, Bill and I were talking before we came in, about 85% of Tier 1 apparel retailers are now there. There's still a lot then in those lower tiers are not there, but, you know, we've really gotten to the point where it's almost a commodity in certain areas among the top retailers in apparel. But that power that we see, that 95%, has never been in the technology itself. It's in the data that technology carries, right? RFID, you know, we have to remember that there's the RF, which is the technology part, and the ID, and that's really the power there. It's carrying that serialized data. So when we have this serialized data, when everything has an identity, it does change the way we can view things. One of the early innovators, and I would say one of the most aggressive adopters and users of RFID is Decathlon. For those of you not familiar, the world's largest sporting goods retailer, 1,800 plus stores. Is that right? I'm gonna make sure I get this right. 60.
Even more.
Even more. Yeah. Okay. So it goes up every day, right?
Yes. Yeah. We don't provide these kind of figures, but yes, it's more than 2,000.
Oh, okay. So it just keeps growing. So
we don't have any store in the US, unfortunately. So this is the reason why we are not so well known here. But we are everywhere else.
Everywhere. So Hervé, let's spend a few minutes just setting that foundation, because you have so aggressively used it. You use it throughout the chain. You're tagging 100% of your products. So talk about that. You know, now that you have visibility, what has this enabled you to do that you couldn't do before?
So thanks, Avery Dennison, for inviting me. This is my first time as a speaker here. So even though I'm in the business since a long time, the first time I'm welcome here to speak. Yes, indeed, I really like your introduction, because we speak a lot about RFID without saying, okay, RFID is just a mean. And for us, the point was to have a serialization, a unique identification of each product, to be able to separate, to identify, to understand the flow, the different elements. And of course, for us, like most of the retailer here, we are using GS1 identification, which make it even interoperable, which is very important for the new, let's say, business model that we are going to have. But indeed, quite rapidly, we understood, okay, for sure, for us, RFID was about knowing our stock, being able to fight against frauds, being able to have a better efficiency in terms of value chain. So I'm not going to explain that, because we will need hours to explain, but for sure, it was about efficiency and it was about operations. Now we see that we are having a massive change, and I think we're going to come to that later on, but the massive change is about the data. So in Decathlon, since 6 years, we are gathering all the different touch points between the product and the readers. We have something like 20,000 readers all over Decathlon, and we have something like 60 billion events stored. So we know exactly each product, from where it was born, where it is sold. Even now, we can have information about the repair, the recycling, and so post-sales events. This is massive. And this is a data that is completely accurate because it's coming from us most of the time. So, you know, in AI, one of the big issues is, okay, is the data accurate, the accuracy of data? If you don't have, you say shit in, shit out. Here, we are speaking about things that we master ourselves. And the potential value creation of that is, we can't even put figures on that because each time we discover more and more use cases. So basically, it started really with efficiency. So really, really operational elements. So how many increased sales you're going to have, how many, the shrinkage, the decrease in shrinkage, very operational. And more now we are turning into a point where the customer is in the center. And thanks to the information of the product, we are going to be able to provide new services and in fact to increase the perceived value of the product.
So, Bill, I hope you noticed there how many times everybody said data, right? And the data. And so what we are talking about is that serialized data, right? That we didn't have before. It becomes foundational, you know, and we've talked about for several years how it's a foundational element of if you're going to be an omni-channel retailer, you've got to have that serialized data because it enables, you know, the truly multiple channels that the boundaries can disappear. It enables that interaction with the customer. As you know, with Avery Dennison, leader in RFID tags, you've seen a lot of different applications. What are you seeing, just taking upon what Hervé said, what are you seeing that this serialized data is allowing retailers to do that they couldn't do before?
So very good question. I think there's really a couple things. I mean, first, foundationally, when you serialize something, you have a good provenance of what that item is. Even though you've got two of the exact same thing, I know that one item is in the back of the store, one item's in the front of the store. I know one's in a DC, I might know one's in a factory. So from a provenance perspective, serialization allows you to create a unique identity for every item. And then what RFID does, it's a great one-to-many technology. So you can collect a lot of data very quickly, right? Which is really important when you start to look at data set modeling, when you start to look at the future of AI and machine learning. So you serialize everything to make sure everything's unique. So you know exactly what you have and more importantly, where you have it. So you can make decisions on Omni. Can I make it available for buy online, pick up in store? Do I have it available for ship from store? So you build that data richness so you can improve things like your order management system or your DOM system for Omni to be more intelligent because that data gives you dimensionality of what you didn't have before. So dimensionality, as you start thinking about AI and machine learning, becomes extremely, extremely important. Because if I know where something is, another dimension you didn't have pre-RFID that was very accurate, then I can make better decisions and train my models to be a lot more effective. And then the last part I think that's really important is RFID transform retailers to look at item level or inventory from a class or a department level to item level, which means you're looking at more dimensions. And as you started to have things like smartphones where consumers started to be able to look at your inventory, those consumers want to have what they want when they want it. So every dimension of that SKU could be really important to a consumer. So you need serialization, you need every dimension of the SKU, and then you need where things are. And those three things, at the time when we started doing this at the item level in 2009, I don't think we realized how critically important that would be for the future of analytics in retail for machine learning and AI. One quick example that's a very simple example, if you've got a retailer that's doing inventory with a serialized data set and doing checkout from a serialized data set, then you can run algorithms that say, what was actually stolen that last week from when I did an inventory? Because if you know an item is in inventory at this serial number and I never sold it, and then you scan it again and it's not there, it was stolen. For the first time, retailers can get theft data versus a shrink data, which includes a lot of things. So that granular level detail, I think, makes a big difference to set up the future of how we want to think about real analytics and training these models to be extremely powerful.
Well, and this is going to be stating the obvious, of course, but it's something that does get lost. Just having an RFID tag on something, great data carrier, it's going to carry the data. We now have serialized data. But if you don't use the data, it doesn't produce the value. And one of the things, Hervé, that you guys have done is you have figured out how to use that data, and the more you use it, the more you figure out how to use it. And Bill, that's what some of the things you were getting into. But when we talk about using that data, right, we've got to get that data from the tag. We've got to take that serialized data. We're seeing more and more ways in which we can grab that data and use that data. And Art, Qualcomm, I'm going to have to admit, I mean, I've known Qualcomm for a very long time. I didn't realize all the cool things that you guys were doing in this space, working with many of the others in this space. But you're literally putting the power of RFID in the hands. And let's start with associates. So just make sure everybody understands some of the things that you guys are doing to put that power in the hands of somebody right at the edge.
Sure. So we work with a lot of retailers globally, Hervé being the most aggressive on wanting RFID integrated. But ultimately, today, you have to buy dedicated devices. They're very expensive. Recent trends, you've seen people do split architectures where they have an RFID reader in the phone. It's still more expensive, but at least the form factor is tolerable. What we've done at Qualcomm, because we own the chip that you talk on with your phone, we own the modem. So we did something, I was asked by a very large retailer a few years ago, why can't every associate have RFID capability in their hands? And I said, well, there's no reason. It took us a little while, but ultimately what we do now is integrate the RFID capability into your phone, for starting with associate devices. There's a very short leap to go into the consumer devices. But ultimately, the same modem you use to talk to a GSM cell tower is the same radio chain that we're using for RFID. So what we've done is highly integrated, which reduces the cost to implement, the complexity to implement. And then now we're looking at people, instead of single-digit penetrations of rugged devices having RFID capability, now it should be a checkbox feature. Just like you have Wi-Fi, just like you have NFC, you should, on the enterprise side, be able to have every associate read RFID without having to pay thousands of dollars per device. So our goal in this entire thing, because of our position, was to democratize RFID. And by having it in every associate's hands, when they start to tap on things around them, you can start to crowdsource. It's not just about a fixed infrastructure play anymore. It's a mobile infrastructure mixed with fixed, and that's all signals coming back in that ultimately AI uses. So it's all about providing relevant context at the point of interest for us.
Now you kind of teased it up with you talked about consumers, and then you just kind of moved on. But let's go back to that. So how close are we to actually having that in the hands of the consumer? Because, you know, it's one thing to have it in associates, and we're going to spend some more time talking about how Decathlon and what Bill and others are seeing, but it opens up a whole new world, right? You put it in my hands as a consumer. So kind of tell me where we're at on that.
Sure. So we're looking at, and by the way, we don't just power mobile devices. We also do things in your home around. So if you start to look at your entire environment, whether it's your personal device, it's your fridge, or your smart assistant at home, understanding what's around it, RFID would be one more input. So we look at the mobile device. I think there's going to need to be a pull from a consumer to drive that demand. Right now, there's a clear business case in enterprise, but I think the consumers, once they get it in their hand and once they have that expectation, once they have that other input, it's not a heavy lift, and it's a short journey. But ultimately, it's possible. We're not violating the laws of physics. We're not adding thousands of dollars to every device to do it. As far as I'm concerned, this becomes one of many things to provide context, whether it's vision or RF or anything else on your device. This is one more input that I think we as consumers, and as agentic AI or AI becomes a bigger deal, this is going to be a necessary input.
So we have products tagged. We've got serialized data now that we didn't have before. Hervé, you guys are able to do some things that you see early on and that you've been able to do now that you have serialized data. Talk about some of those things that you didn't even envision when you first got into this, and once you started tagging 100%, you saw those things. What are some ways in which it has really changed the way you all approach the things you do in the store in particular?
So at the store level, I would say, first of all, we had to make it work. But once we were, I think the turning point was to be 100% RFID. Because if you have part of your product that is not RFID, then you cannot propose something that is coherent. So it took a long time because I don't know if you have a sense of what is in a Decathlon. We have a lot of different kind of products. So it was very difficult. We even sell bottle of water at 50 cents. So we have to have the right element to say, okay, how we are going to massively tag at the source. So it was complex indeed. And I think we started in 2014, then 2020, 19, 20, we were there. And then it was the second revolution. And the second revolution started with the cash deals. But then we started to have the first way, okay, but what can we do with the data? And first of all, the first element was we are able to notice when we make a sale where the good was in the store. So it was related to the localization of the product. So you're able to say, okay, I have a special area where I do some promotion. What is the impact of a promotion in the store? So, and that was really something that you say, oh, but that's incredible. And standard retailer will say, oh, if you know that, that's key. But it was the only first small thing that we could do. And now we are able, in fact, we realize that we call that the traceability environment. We call that digital twin. We have internally the 60 billion is a digital twin. We are able, in fact, to link all the different databases of Decathlon. So you can guess what is the transfer price of a product that is in a store, when it crossed the border, what happened to the product, and you can make a lot of different elements. So now I'm like, Santa Claus. It's a season. It's a little bit late, but I have a lot of people coming to me saying, I need to do that since 10 years. I cannot do it. And with the data, you say, but we have it already. So I spend a lot of time internally to explain what we have in data. So to give you some examples, now you have a product in store, so you have upward and downwards. The idea is when you have a product in store, you have the whole life. You can even go until the buying of raw material. You can say if this product is made of recycle, for instance, plastic, all these kind of elements. You even have a CO2 consumption that is different. Today we have that in our database. Unfortunately, we cannot show to the customer because the customer will not understand that two T-shirts, exactly the same size, same color, same model, may have a different carbon footprint. So we are really way beyond the expectation of customers. And now we say, okay, what are we going to implement now? What are we going to do in terms of transparency? So you're going to see more and more things coming from Decathlon in the next months, but we are now implementing it. So tomorrow, when you're going to a Decathlon store, when you're going to buy a product, you're going to have the full life cycle of a product. If you're buying, for instance, a bike, and you have some spare parts, you're going to see the spare parts, are the spare parts compatible with the bikes you have already, all the different elements. So we are not going to use sport products, we are not going to buy sport products the same way that we did before.
I don't know if you've noticed, if you've walked around the expo floor, there's a few booths talking about AI. Has anybody noticed that? You hadn't noticed? Yeah. You should walk around. There's some out there that's talking about AI. And so it's interesting because ultimately for AI to work, you have to have data, and you have good data, right? And that's when we were first talking about this idea of RFID being that foundational layer. If you can get that serialized data, and what Hervé and his colleagues are doing, 100% of the products. Now you get this visibility in the stores of 100% of your products, and you start seeing this stuff along the supply chain. And we went from tagging things at the store, at the source, now flowing all the way through. We've got logistics providers that are now getting in on this, so that you really have that visibility from the point of manufacturer all the way through to the consumer. When you have that insight, when you have that level of visibility at the serialized level, it enables us to do things that we could not do before. And if that data is missing, I don't care how good your models are, they'll never be as good as they can be without that level of data. So Bill and Art, I'm going to throw this out to you guys on, what are you seeing there from the AI platform perspective? And you can either drill down into generative or agentic or however you want to talk about it, but what are you seeing there? And some of the things maybe that you're even showing here at the show.
Yeah. So real quick, I mean, again, I'll go back to from a data perspective. One of the really important things, I think, when you get behind the hood and look at machine learning models and AI models, it's really a predictability model, and you're trying to rationalize a lot of data, correlate it, drive causal impacts of what's happening. But when you go from 65% inventory accuracy to 95, 98% inventory accuracy, your confidence level and your reliability level goes up to make decisions. That's essentially what AI does. So when you feed AI data that you feel very confident in, your model becomes more predictable. And so I'll give you one kind of interesting question, and I don't know the answer to the question. It'll depend on the retailer and et cetera. But you look at omnichannel, right? RFID is going to ensure that you have, say, 98% inventory accuracy in your enterprise. But RFID is not going to solve a true out of stock. If you're truly out of stock and you don't have any inventory, it's not going to solve that. So how do you think about then, if I have visibility like some retailers do back into the supply chain, do I take an item off a website because I'm truly out of stock, or do I leave it in stock and just make my delivery mechanism a little bit different, right? How do I think about demand algorithms differently when I have high reliability, high confidence in my inventory? I know it's serialized. I know I've got all the dimensions of what my customers want, right? And I have a high confidence level. So I think that's really what, when you start to build machine learning and AI models, is you want to understand the confidence level in your data. And this is really a game-changing foundation for that confidence level as you look at your supply chain from an inventory availability, right, consumer insight perspective. So I think that's one really important context here is the confidence reliability perspectives. And we're looking at new things too. We talk about apparel a lot, but at Avery, we're looking at things like the food segment, right? How do we enable things in food and things that really matter to reduce food waste for the planet and for retailers in the future? So food is a really big focus of ours. You can see that that demo in our booth and where we're focused there. The same things we're doing for apparel, we want to do for all CPG products, and we want to do for food in the future. So we're very interested and very focused from an innovation perspective to bring that to life, because there's so much more we can do, and that's what makes innovation in this area so much fun. There's so many things we have to learn and go do, and if you build the right foundation, I think it gives us a lot of capabilities to go do that. So
yeah, and I'm glad you brought up food, because in our booth we're actually showing an RFID fridge. So I think when you start to look at how do the consumers interact post-sale, enterprise, pretty easy. We can drive through. If something's recalled, something's maybe expired, your fridge lets you know. Maybe your smart assistant lets you know. But this whole thing of now having it in your pocket, the ability for your device, which moves with you, learns with you, understands you probably better than you understand yourself, to now start making relevant recommendations or to feed those agentic models with meaningful data. And I think it all comes down, we've been talking about meaningful data ultimately. That all becomes a reality. Everyone's, I think 2 years ago, the big demo was the Gen AI query where people talk and you get some response back. Now start thinking, if you were to do that same thing, I have $100, I need to feed 6 people for a week, what do I do? Now your device knows what's in your fridge, what's in your pantry, where you are in physical space, whether or not you're in a store already, and then we'll know that inventory of the store. So now these recommendations that come back won't just be a simple, here's your recipe. It's like here's the retailers that have this in stock. Here are the things you already have at home as part of that solution. And will now, from a user perspective, it's meaningful. You potentially have people courting you to come to their store instead of the one you're in. But at the end of the day, you're not going to buy, you're not going to buy ketchup for the 3rd time this week because you forgot it was at home. Or you won't, the data always is key. And I think that's where you're going to see the difference, and you'll see consumers engage. And like I said, we're playing in all aspects. So I think we're in a unique position to see where it's going, and we certainly see the need to embrace this tech as one additional input. It's not going to be the one thing that solves all of our problems, but that coupled with vision and other signals, I think becomes very meaningful. Vision, location, and all the RF signals.
I'm gonna come back to that in just a minute with the other signals. But Avery, I'd be interested in what you can share publicly. Again, as an innovator here, you've had the benefit of having this data, probably unlike any other retailer has to this point. You have to be way out there on the AI side, right? Can you share some things that you guys are thinking about and what what you can do, or maybe what you're already starting to do?
So there is this kind of layer approach that we have in Decathlon. So first was operational, efficiency. And the second layer with the data is really about making the right decision and taking the right decision first internally. So our whole value chain is materialized within our database. As I said, 60 billion, most of them are internal, let's say, events from the birth of the product until it is sold. A few portion is post-sales, and it's growing. But with this part, for sure, I cannot communicate exactly with whom we're doing that, but we are starting to analyze this data. And indeed, today, when we make some choices in our supply chain to bring some geographical zone and to try to guess how we are going to manage a supply chain and make some choice, some decision, some management decision that are really, really impacting because it's costing a lot. Where to put some warehouse, how to, tomorrow, we are going to be that using the data that we have today. We didn't do that like 2 or 3 years ago. So now we are it's a continuous improvement. But tomorrow, indeed, we have all the different flows. You can check a warehouse is doing first in, first out. You can check the expiry date of your product. You know, an helmet, a bike helmet, has a 3-year lifetime expectancy, even if it has not an expiry date. So if the helmet is staying 1 year in a Decathlon warehouse, it loses 1/3 of the value for the customer. So all these elements, I would say, will allow us to take the right decision, operational decision. So it's not anymore efficiency, but it's taking the decision for the future. And the third level of the value creation is the customer. So how we are going indeed to have an increase on the perceived value of the product. This is incredible. We're speaking about the same product, just has a tag embedded, and because we are going to make a lot of service out of this product, the perceived value of the product will increase a lot. So I can give you a lot of examples. Like for instance, you have a life jacket, you are in a sailing club, you can check that the maintenance of the jacket is done. This is not science fiction, we do that today already. So everything related to safety, but also when you're repairing a bike, we know what you have bought as long as you stay in Decathlon for sure, but then we have interoperability and we'll see how we're going to have this third level that will be interoperable, but at least at Decathlon, you have the bike, you have all the different spare parts that have been bought by the customer. You can check if the customer is able to make a reparation. He's saying, I've broke something. Okay, normally you should have something in your garage that is doing that. Or you should buy it now. Or we can even, when you ask me that, I will make an appointment for you at the workshop. So you see how we are going to transform the life of the people. I'm sure you have a lot of kids and they all have a different size. They all have different size of bike and different size of wheels. And you have so many different wheels in your garage at the moment in time. You don't know if you can, when your kid is calling, you don't know if you have enough to repair at night because he has to go to school tomorrow. I think today we will make instantaneously. Normally, I'm using more and more my bike to go to work, to do some element that I used to do with my car, but I need to have an instant fix of all the elements that are belonging to my bike. So how we are going to make this, like in half an hour, I will find where near me there will going to be a place where they sell the spare part I need to repair now my bike. And this is what we're going to offer. So it's really first efficiency. The second will be AI, let's say, taking the best decision. But the third, that's where we're going to create a lot of value, is the customer.
And we're just scratching the surface, right? We are just scratching the surface. So as we talked about, right, we have the tags, carry the data. We've got to have the devices to get that data, and then how you use it, and then ultimately, as the user of those things, right? How do you reimagine retail? Bill, Art, we've got about 45 seconds left. Just last word. We've talked about RFID, but there's lots of other ways to carry data, right? Or get data. It could be vision, could be 2D barcode, lots of different ways. Sensor fusion. Go, 30 seconds.
Boy, that's quick. Okay. I think, again, sensors all have a purpose, and so you have to figure out what data you're trying to get, right? A lot of people are using synthetic data to build models, and then you kind of work backwards on what sensor you need. But, what data do you need, and then what's the right sensor to get that data? RFID is the best sensor from a one-to-many perspective. So you want to collect a lot of data very quickly. 2D barcode, great one-to-one sensor. BLE, great few mini sensor. So there's all these sensors. So really, at the end of the day, it's really starting with what you want to solve, working backwards to figure out what sensors, and then we can fuse that data to make predictive and prescriptive analytics. So That's my 15-second.
I'll touch real quick. It was more 40 seconds.
Okay.
So
It's hard.
just real quick, if you look at it, it's all going to be about your personal UI, how you engage, whether you're an associate or you're someone sitting in this room. It's all of those feedback, all that feedback coming in, so you're getting relevant recommendations. The agent is doing something meaningful on your behalf. So ultimately, we all get to be selfish thanks to agents and what's going on with AI, and your personal UI is going to change. And this is just one input signal on that, and I think that's the biggest part.
All right. Go by and see the cool things at the Qualcomm booth, at the Avery Dennison booth. Please thank my panelists for a great session today.